everyone. Hello, hello. Happy Friday. So I want to start out today and apologize that I have missed 2 of these pink sheeps in a row. I guess technically I didn't miss the first one because the weather knocked out our internet, so I wasn't able to continue with that one. But we had a little bit of an adventure last Friday and I had to cancel last minute. So I apologize for anyone who was waiting or wondering if we were even alive. But we actually drove down to Orlando to buy an RV. I haven't shared anything about that yet. I did turn on subscriptions here on Instagram. If anyone wants a way to support us, it's like 99 cents a month. It's kind of like a tip jar is what I would, a lot of people have little tip jars on their link tree. But I turned that on and I've been sharing some subscriber only stories about the Instagram. About the RV. So if you want to see it, we haven't gotten to a point where we're sharing it yet on the main feed. We're still working on her. But we have been sharing some fun little stories, and I think I'm going to do a walkthrough for subscribers maybe today if it stops raining. So, but yes, so it's time for Yarn Said. I hope you had a good trip to Florida. You drove right past me. Yes, and we left Thursday at midnight and we're back Sunday at like 2 a.m. So it was a really quick turnaround, but it was really fun and we're super excited to have the RV, and we can't wait to bring you guys on adventures with us. And I think that the next Pink Sheep and Friends, either next week or the week after, it will be, it might be from the road. Fingers crossed, because that'd be really fun. That'd be really fun to do the first Pink Sheep and Friends from the road. So, well, without further ado, I am super excited to be talking with another hook maker today. So let's bring her on. So this is Patty from CroChic Styles. Internet out, knock on wood. I do have a wood desk, so I can knock on wood. Here we go. Woohoo! Hello. And let me turn my volume up because I don't think it's all the way up. No, of course it wasn't. Okay, there we go. I should be able to hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Like I said, it's not the best weather out today, and I was a little suspect because I was like, I'm not going to have another Pink Sheep and Friends interrupted by our power getting knocked out.
Yeah. Oklahoma can be the same way, and luckily it worked out just fine. So
yeah. And where are you guys in Oklahoma?
So we're in, it's called Enid, Oklahoma. They call it Enid, America, like dead center of the U.S. So
okay. Hey, that's really cool. And I've never been to Oklahoma. I think the farthest, I think I've been over towards Texas. Well, we went to California once, but we haven't really road tripped in the U.S., which is hopefully going to change with RV.
Yeah. No, Enid, it's like a cute little quaint town for sure. We volunteered to come here, but definitely not the greatest city we've been in. But it's very family friendly. Gotcha.
That's important. Yeah. That's important. How many kids do you guys have?
Oh, I'm sorry. You kind of just.
I think you're cutting out a little bit. Sorry.
Let me try and fix my Wi-Fi real quick.
Okay. Technology is so much fun, y'all.
I know.
I think so. Oh, I think so. No, you're good. I was saying, how many kids do you guys have?
So I have a 3-year-old that I've birthed, and then I also have my stepdaughter. She's 7. Gotcha. She's actually here in town for spring break, actually. Okay. Where she lives in Texas. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, I mean, I think that's important. Like I feel like we've kind of been lucky picking homes and things. We don't have kids, so we're like, I don't really care about the school systems and like all of that. So it's been a little more of like a freedom side. But yeah, I could imagine, I know, living somewhere that's family friendly is extremely important.
It is.
You guys have like a lot of events and things?
They have a lot of really good family events, and especially for the military families here, they know it's not the most ideal location. So they do a really good job supporting the families here.
Gotcha. Tell me, if you don't mind, a little bit about your military background and like what that has meant for you with what you're doing now.
Oh my gosh, it is tied in so beautifully with this job. So I've been in the military since 2008. I joined right out of high school.
Gotcha.
And I used to do public health. So the beauty of that is that there was a lot of like food inspections and facility inspections. So because we have employees, I'm able to take the OSHA requirements that are required for training other employees and actually embed that into our business, because as like you're aware with like some of the materials that are used, it can be actually hazardous. So we do have to make sure they have proper like PPE to make sure that they're not going to get hurt from that long term, along with like workman's comp and things like that. So we've done that. And then I eventually got my degrees in exercise physiology, both my bachelor's and my master's. So then I got hired on as a aerospace physiologist. Everyone, it's probably one of the coolest jobs I've ever heard of. Everyone's always fascinated by it. And that has been amazing because I have been an instructor, and because of how far I've made it into my career so far, I've had to manage over a lot of people, things, money, resources. So that has helped tremendously trying to grow our business recently. So we're using a lot of those skill sets heavily.
Yeah, and so you still work full-time doing the aerospace physiology?
Yes, I can't do the full scope of my job anymore because I just got diagnosed with axial spondyloarthritis, which is why I'm standing up right now, because sitting down actually makes it worse. But yeah, it's wild. But I can't do my job as well anymore, and I get these severe attacks, and anyone with autoimmune disease would probably understand like how debilitating it can be. So sometimes I'm super quiet on social media, and then sometimes I'm like super like on it, and it's probably because I'm having those down days where I just can't. Like Saturday, I slept for almost a whole 24-hour period. So because of that, we're gonna start doing this full time. We're just waiting on the military to do my disability ratings to determine how disabled I am from being able to perform my job, and then from there, I'll have to start looking for different resources for my medical care once we move somewhere. So,
So you already know you're going to be moving from where you are now?
My husband just got hired by Delta Airlines. So if you're ever flying with Delta, that will be him. We just got done with a graduation down in Atlanta, and we'll be based out of Salt Lake City. So we're starting to look at potential facilities to actually build our business out of, because we don't really want people working out of our home anymore. So, which has worked well because of the people we know and everything. But one of our employees has expressed interest to move with us. And so the business is going pretty well for that too.
That's awesome. And so is he a pilot?
He is. He used to be a fighter pilot. Flew F-16s, dropped bombs with ISIS and everything, if you will, in deployed locations. Very proud of his work, and now he's doing commercial airlines. So in the best interest for our family at this time. So
and so did you guys meet in the military?
We did. We met in Korea. So we met out there, just randomly partying together. And we actually had a girl almost get into a major accident in an aircraft. And that's when we started to communicate with one another. And then we've moved multiple locations and got married. And now we're here.
It's always such a fun story, I think. I mean, and I think a lot of the stories, like, you could probably talk an entire day about the intricacies of how everything happened.
Super detailed. But it's like, complicated.
So how did crochet even enter your world? How did that start for you?
So it initially started where like I would visit my grandma in the summer when I was like 8. And so.
And where did you grow up?
I'm a military brat. So I was born in
everywhere
and went to Arizona and went to all of these different locations, but I call Illinois home. So I did learn how to crochet from my grandma. My cousins learned how to crochet and knit. And then because I didn't live close to my grandma, my mom just did the standard thing of like taking me to Michael's and just was like, here's a book, go figure it out. And I was like, huh? And I was 8 years old trying to like look at these like little lined like drawings. Yeah. And I'm like, you know, and people are on YouTube learning, and I'm like, you didn't go through what I did. Like, you didn't have to go through those books. So that's how I learned. And then eventually, like, I kind of lost, I mean, I had interest, but then it kind of would go in and out because, you know, you start reaching high school in your younger 20s, and people just make fun of you. They're like, oh, what are you doing? Like, it's so grandma of you. And, you know, we've all been there. And now it's like super popular. So it's like, but it re-entered my life a few years ago, where I went through an abusive situation with a previous marriage, and then I found crochet as kind of like an outlet for a source of depression that I had. So then that's when I just started making blankets and just doing a bunch of random stuff. And then when I met my husband, he needed a hobby. Like, he could not stand me crocheting while watching TV. So he needed a hobby, and that's how we got into the whole crochet hook business.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So when you first started crocheting, did you ever dabble in like going to shows to sell your stuff, or did you make everything just as gifts, or did you ever, you know, sell the finished pieces?
Yeah, so most of it was just like making things for family, or making like little scarves for me, you know, like little crooked edges and everything like that. I didn't really start selling it until I was in New Mexico with my husband, and he just looked at me and he's just like, you ever thought about just selling this stuff? And I go, no, because no one's going to buy it. And then we sure enough tried it out, and I made these little baby booties, and they just went wild. And that was, he was like, well, how do you want to do this? And I was like, here's the deal, like $100, this is how I'll start my business. And sure enough, $100 is what started our business.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you did start selling some things. You still sell finished products now. I know, right on your website, there's a few items that you can purchase, right?
I put more, I started to split that up a little bit. I used to use Etsy, I stopped, and now I'm back. And so I put aircraft aviation themed products on Etsy. So if people in the aviation community want something that has an airplane on it, or a theme for like babies and stuff, that's where I put most of my stuff. But I've done blankets with airplanes on them. I've done all of that. It seems interesting, but it's a whole community that we're tied to.
Well, I mean, it's like with any business, if you can find a niche, you know, I mean, you'll be so surprised. Like, I never realized that when we started making just the crochet merchandise, I didn't realize how big of a gap there was, because there's crochet merchandise out there, but a lot of it is, I guess you would call it like kitschy, I guess would be the right term. Like, it's cutesy, and which is fine, but that's not my style. So like niching down even further of like, okay, I want to make crochet and knit stuff, but I want it to be like, for me, it's kind of that like tattoo vibe, you know, that illustrative old school, you know, and never realizing that that would take off the way that it did, but finding that niche.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because when I would be on Etsy and things like that, I would see that same theme, and I'm like, that's got to be the same creator. And sure enough, it was you. So you definitely created a design and style for yourself, and you managed it. It's definitely a unique one that is super catchy.
Yeah. And so you have a few, I started seeing you've created some merchandise as well. And I would love to know where that idea came from, and if you think you're going to continue to create more like stickers and merchandise and things like that.
So I kind of dabbled into it a little bit, like just putting some soft items out there just to trial and error what it would be like. So, and not only that, just to see what companies I like to use for the actual finished product, because you can see something online, it looks okay, but then when you get it in person, you're like, never mind. So
Yep.
I started dabbling into it. The stickers and the shirts I'm dabbling into, but I'm hoping that when we grow the business, we'll hire a graphic designer that's dedicated to
Yeah.
our business because I don't have that skill. So we'd probably like work with them on that and actually like W-2 them rather than like 1099 them. So I
Yep.
think that would work a lot better.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've looked at working with, there's a couple of people that I've met throughout the years within the, if you go to craft shows, if you go to markets, you meet so many people. And there's people that I've kind of kept in my pocket of like, this would be really fun to collaborate on a design. I don't have a lot of drawing skills. I mean, I feel like that's why I keep my stuff as simple as possible,
Yeah.
I can't do a lot of shading and so I was like, if I could work with like a tattoo artist, because I know that's my style, but if I could work with someone who has a little bit more of a higher skill level when it comes to the sketching and the drawing and like coming up with completely unique ideas,
Have you
is where I can struggle.
have you tried a creative market?
No.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-mm. I don't know what
So
it is.
it's like the Etsy of people who want to design,
Gotcha.
whether it's creating templates for Canva. So anyone who wants to be an aspiring business owner, this is awesome because that's where I actually started learning about like drop shipping and like getting staged photos and stuff.
Yeah.
So on there, you can actually go and find vector artists, designers and stuff, and you can see what they've already pre-made and you can buy
Yeah.
packages from them. Or you can contact them directly and ask them if you can contract them out and things like that. So I would highly recommend it because you might actually find someone who does a tattoo style already, many of them, and then you might be able to like hunker down on a specific thing, just saying like, I want it to be crochet related, for instance. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I would love to know, and I'm sure you've shared this story a lot because it's always like the story of the business or the story brand. But how did it start with the hook making? Like, where did that moment happen and how has that process looked like, especially working so closely with your husband?
Yeah, luckily my husband and I have worked together at work, so we kind of know each other very well in that aspect. So it works very well at home too. But when it came to the hook making, I told you earlier, like Paul needed a hobby, and so
Uh-huh.
he decided that he was going to pick up a lathe. So he went to Harbor Freight, got a lathe, and we still have that same exact lathe. And he started wood turning hooks, and honestly, it all started because I had a crochet hook. It was super expensive. And when I got it, I was cramping really hard. And I was like, I just spent a ton of money on this hook and it hurts. I don't want to use it anymore. And of course, my husband's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So, so he decided to try and make it, and he loves me to death. So he's like, I'll do anything to make Patty happy. So he made this wood hook, and man, I should have had it here because that thing's
it's okay.
it's bad. But he tried so hard. And we laugh about it till this day. So then he did another one, and it came out great. But the problem was we couldn't figure out with wood, like how to smooth it out and how to not break the hook. That is like the key, is not to break the actual hook tip.
Yeah.
It came out great. And then of course I'm like, can you put glitter on it? And he's like, so he put the glitter on it. It didn't work. And so I was like, this is going to be a problem because it'll just keep nicking my yarn. It just felt gross. So then he started looking into resin. And started looking into, and he's an engineer by trade, so he like went down to the technical data of temperatures and you name it. And
down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, down the rabbit hole. It used to take us about 4 hours to make, like total time process. It used to take about 4 hours per hook to make, maybe even longer, and then he might break it. So now we've fine-tuned a lot of our process. Like as we keep growing, we keep investing in new equipment, and that's helping us a lot. And we don't want to lose touch of the customization and everything. And so now we've got it down to where a hook total time, if you were to just like rapidly go through it all after the cure time, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes, but the demand for us is still pretty high. So we can't get them all done in 15 minutes.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah, I feel you on processing time. and then it could fail. That's with the printing. So our hooks print standing up on the bed, you know, and obviously that's why it has the base,
Yeah.
which people think is so funny, but I was like, happy accident, you know. But they print this way, and literally this section of the hook is the most likely piece to break. And it's like the last 5 minutes of a 3-hour print.
Yeah.
So it's
People
like,
don't understand the pain and suffering that comes with that. Like, yeah, it's miserable.
Yeah. Well,
saw
and
you
so I would love,
that.
go ahead.
I saw that on your live the other day doing all the hooks, and I was like, what is going
Yes.
on there? I saw you guys were putting coating on. So, and we used
Yeah.
to do that to our hooks, but if anyone's ever seen like a resin crochet hook, you'll see like drips of like the clear coating. And so we had to move away from that. Otherwise, we would have had to constantly like grind that thing down and sand it. So it didn't work out.
Yeah. 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 I mean, right now, that's what I like to go live from time to time, and we're always going to be open to figuring out new ways to do the process. And we've tried different things, but at this point it is, you know, after it's printed directly off the plate, like it, you know, it's not going to be smooth enough to work with yarn. And then if you sand it, it's still not, it's going to be more like an unfinished wooden hook.
Yeah.
So like it would technically be smooth enough. But you know, most people want a little bit more glide.
Yeah.
Than that's going to offer.
And I'd imagine that like because if you did have to sand it down, you'd probably have to size the hook a tad bit bigger to accommodate for the size difference too.
At this time, yeah, I mean, if we had to sand it to the point where it was that smooth, yeah. At this time, the good thing is with the sanding plus the resin, it usually equals itself out. But yeah, the hand coating with the resin has definitely been the hardest part, because it is time consuming to coat them all, and then you have to wait, you know, at least a day or two before you can sand that one and then recoat it. So, you know, that wait time is definitely the you know, the hardest part.
I'll have to ask somebody we know, his son does like CAD and stuff, and he works with manufacturers, and they were talking to us at the time when we were actually doing like the coatings and everything, that there's like some sort of a piece of equipment that can actually help, like it's like beads or something like that, and it just like churns and then everything comes out polished and clean. We never invested into it, we don't know all the details of it, but I'd imagine that might help with you.
That's interesting. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, it's just so interesting, the process of, like you said, as you're working through your business and seeing how it's changed. Because I'm sure for you guys, from the first hooks that you made, and what's that timeline? So when did you guys do like your first hook release?
The first hook release was in June of 19. And we only had, I think, like 24 hooks available. And at the time it was like we had like the hook, and it was already pre-made, but you had to decide what size you wanted. And then we would finish it off from there, and we were like, this is not going to work.
And you did that like by hand. So did you have to sand out the hook head by hand?
We were still using our lathe, and we were still cutting things down. Everything was still extremely lathe based, and our hooks are still lathe based. Don't get me wrong. It's just how we've changed the process is just trying to make sure like we can get into those grooves a little bit better, and it's a difference in how we get that hook on the lathe to finish the polishing, and that's what gives the whole gliding like butter sensation that everyone talks about.
That's really cool. That's one of my husband would love to have a lathe. Like, he's one of those people, and I don't know if your husband is this way, but he wants all the tools. Yeah. Like, if he doesn't have a tool to do something, he wants that tool to do that thing.
No, I feel him on that one. And that's kind of how we've been. And we do try to, all the money that we've made in our business, honestly, all the money that's been made, all the profits have not gone to us. Like I feel like I'm working for free at this point. But most of it has gone towards getting new equipment for Paul, or the next step is like getting a bunch of new workshop work tables, just so that things can be a lot easier rather than these like broken down, pieced together things to just, I don't know, like you just MacGyver everything at this point.
Yes. Yeah. So you guys want an actual like workspace. I'd love to hear kind of what would be like the big dream for your business? Like, where do you see yourself?
It's hard to but I would say perfect world. I would like to have at least minimum a space solely for people to come in and work on almost like their own timeline, because that's kind of what our current workers do. We don't really enforce. Yeah, we just say you have to meet this amount done for the day, and it's just task-based work rather than hour-based work.
Gotcha.
And if they want more work, then we go from there. But then if we can, ideally, I would like to embrace more of a crochet-based yarn shop, because when you go into knit shops, like, it's very knit-focused, and crocheters, I think, have a tendency to feel just kind of excluded. Because many times the owner is typically a knitter and they don't know crochet. But I've been in our yarn shop in town and they've been so amazing. Like, it's the first yarn shop I've been to where they've totally embraced crocheters, because they actually get more crocheters than they do knitters. So
I've never understood the idea of excluding an entire source of revenue. Yeah. I mean, like, if you're looking at it from a business standpoint, why would you not embrace, if people love your work, if they want to support you, why would you say, oh, no, we don't want you to, like, we're good. We're good with with these people that are.
I went to one yarn shop once where I was like, it was kind of like a weird feeling where it's like, you're not good enough. And it's like, okay, like, I guess I won't be back here. Yeah. Like, you had my money at one point, but not anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And do you know how to knit? Did you learn how to knit at all?
No, but I want to learn how to knit. And when I do learn how to knit, I want to keep it entirely separate from the business, because I want that to just be like my downtime. I do love the style of knitting. My friend Autumn, actually, I'm going to go see her right after this down the street, and she knits. And I told her when I get done with the military, I'm going to be over at her house every day. She's going to learn how to knit. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I think that I learned knitting and crocheting at the same time, but it was in high school, so it's kind of fuzzy. Like, I'm not really sure. I think maybe I only learned how to knit first. I don't know. But I was with you on the books. I do still have some of my old books where I was having to learn crochet stitches from a book. And then it wasn't until, and I thought this was really interesting because I don't talk about it a lot because I'm one of those people who didn't use what I went to school for at all. But my master's program, so I didn't graduate, I was there for a year, but it was in exercise physiology.
Cool. You got me.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, for me, it was, I think I never really knew what I wanted to go to school for, and that was the problem. So I was in psychology and biology undergrad, and then didn't know where to go. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, you know, and I just so happened to get into that program, but the problem was I didn't know what I was going to do with that degree when I got done with it. And that's what my husband was like.
Training. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can do that without that, you know? And so, you know, there were people who wanted to be like cardiologists and, you know,
physical therapy.
They wanted to work with like sports teams and things, but it was such a focused track. And I was like, I don't want to do any of this. I don't know why I'm here. You know what I mean? And, you know, I don't look back and regret any of it, but I think some of it was the fact that I'm such a community. I wanted to be around people. And when I was in that program, I was literally just like in a lab for every class, like sticking electrodes on athletes. And I was like, yeah. But if you have a focus, I think that was my problem is I was like, well, I got into the program and I got a full ride scholarship. So I guess I'll just do it. Yeah. When it's like, well, but, you know, but then if you don't have a focus,
you know what's funny is I've met a lot of people who I think you and I both and many others probably listening right now were told, go to college. And then by the time you finish, there was at the time not a lot of jobs that were offering, and they wanted you to work like these like low rates, free internships. And you're like, I can't do this. And honestly, like, even though I didn't really actually, I used my degree. It does help me a lot. But other than that, like, I just learned how to meet tasks, deadlines, and work and collaborate So
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily a waste of time doing college in that aspect, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I use my psych degree every day.
Yeah.
You know, that's been very helpful. And like you said, I think one of the reasons why college is helpful is if you make it through. I mean, like if you work all the way through, it just shows you can stick to a task, you can focus, you can study,
Yeah.
you put parameters in place, you know, to be able to, like you said, get things done, get tasks completed, work with other people. You know, so I do think it's important if, you know, but again, like people pay so much money now for college. And I think that's, you know, my dad, he was like, when I went to school, I could work the summer semester at home and make enough money to pay the next semester's tuition.
Not
So he
anymore.
paid his
Yeah.
way through. I know. Yeah.
My dad conned me into joining the military, and like that's how I got my degree done. But I'm ever so grateful for it. But you know, it's interesting, and I hope that people don't think that they only have to go to college to be
Yeah.
successful. I think we forget about the traditional like blue collar jobs, and
Mhm.
those people need to get paid like $1 million. Like the plumbing, the electricity,
Yeah.
like those are huge, and we totally underestimate it.
Yeah. And it's in demand at this point. We actually
It-
have one of my husband's younger cousins is like 19, I think, and he dropped out of college his first year to go get an electrician's like license. He's
yeah,
doing the apprenticeship and everything. Um, and we were like, good on you. Like, if that's what you mean, you can make a living, it's going to be hard work. But once you get that kind of experience, you know, you can do anything you want with that when it comes to like opening your own business and like, you know, if you get through all the
yeah,
levels. But I'll tell you, my husband, he tried twice to go to college and it never worked out. It was just not, he's not the type of person where a professor tells you this is the way it is and you're going to have to write this down on a test and he's
yeah,
like, but you're wrong.
yeah.
So that didn't work very well. But he almost always made at least double the money when it came to salaries as I did with degree.
Yeah.
So, you know.
It's honestly how, it's how you advertise yourself. It's
uh
what you portray your skill sets to be too. I mean, and it's sometimes how you network. So
Yeah.
it depends. And that's not just in those industries either. Like I hear crocheters and knitters saying all the time, like they're struggling, and I'm just like, well, let's check out your Instagram. Let's check
Yeah.
out your website. What do you show? Like if you're going to be a tech editor, do you have a bio for that? Because I don't see that. So how
Yeah.
can you be successful if you're not showcasing your
Yeah.
skill sets, you know?
Yeah. I think I definitely think that running a business full time, because this was my first time. I mean, I had dabbled in like going to shows and doing photography, but my husband always had a full-time job, you know, so I didn't have the stress of like I have to make enough to pay all of our bills. It was
Yeah.
just like I feel like I'm bringing in, you know, enough to help and, you know, while also taking care of the house, all that stuff. But you know, now I realize it is so much work. There's always work to be done.
Yeah.
There's always like website updates and social media and
Yeah.
email newsletters and, you know, and then just packing up orders or making the
Yeah.
inventory. But it's worth it.
It
It
is.
has so been worth
Yeah.
it.
It's definitely insightful because everyone's like, I just want to be a business owner, and they just see what's on social media. But then behind the scenes, like, there's so much that goes into it. It's just not as simple
Yeah.
as like, here you go, ship it out. It's like, did I plan this correctly? Do I have shipping days? There's just so many things that go to it, and you have to take into account all the different cost measures with like the electricity that you burn and everything just to uphold your business. Like,
Yeah.
people forget about that too. It's a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's easy to get stuck in the cycle of s- spending money before you even have
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? So, like using today's orders to pay for what you've already purchased but hasn't been sold, like
Yeah,
getting behind on the financial ball, I think it's the scariest thing that can happen with a business, you
it
know, because once you
is.
get behind,
Yeah.
you don't know if you're going to be able to catch
Yeah,
up.
and we finally kind of, because like as we keep growing, we have to like produce, like right now it's like I thought I had enough packages to last me for the full quarter, and we've already reached half of the sales that we did last year, half of that, and we're just like, uh-oh, like we have, because we're doing daily sales now and multiple. So but it's funny because like my friend Autumn, like I love her to death, and she's like, we're like working through price points and stuff, and I show her my Excel spreadsheet. This thing's got like, I don't know, like 200 columns in it, and it breaks it down into like this level of detail where every penny is accounted for in terms of like, you know, if I have my website, my email marketing, discounts, all of that, the transaction fees. So I hope that no one ever thinks that our hooks are just some arbitrary number, because honestly, it's not.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think our hooks, our hooks and your hooks are very similar in price, and I think the more people see these handmade hooks at these price points, especially, you know, when it's multi-stage pieces, and I see people too. There are people who are selling hooks that I'm like, you have got to raise your prices. Like, I can't remember who it is now, and I wouldn't call them out on here, but they use clay, and they make the cutest, like, detailed clay, like, you know, animals and things that go into these hooks, and I see the price, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way. Like, there's no way you're paying yourself the time and the effort and the materials that are going into these gorgeous clay hook handles. You know what I mean?
We used to sell our hooks, I think, at like $19 or $20, and we were working for 4 hours on a hook, and it was like, what were we thinking? We were just like, I don't know, we'll do it as a hobby. But then it was getting to the point where even if it was a hobby, just to like keep something going so I could get more material to pay for the hobby, it was burning us out, and so we couldn't do it anymore, and it was actually putting us under. So then we raised it to $30, and at that point, like, we did lose some customers, and we were aware of that. But it was either we keep going with the business or we stop altogether. And so the current price points that we have now are mostly due to supply and demand after COVID. We can't help those prices. We try our best to manage and oversee the price points every time we make purchases to see where we can bring it down. But we just can't unless if we start mass producing these in like a manufacturing facility. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, you have employees that you're paying. So, I mean, I think that brings it up another notch, you know.
So all the money that is paid out, it does go to our employees, and we do tip them if they do make more hooks than what we request for them to do. So like we have like these hooks that just don't meet the quality of like what we would sell at full price. So we put them on clearance. And so when we have those hooks, we have like a massive bucket, and we say, hey, if you got extra time, work through these. And they're the practice hooks to train people on. They're the hooks that we send out for clearance. So like right now we're projecting for another clearance sale. Can't really say when. It really just depends on when they get those things done enough to put on sale. But
that's really cool. I like that. We used to have, we called them oopsie hooks. And the good thing is we don't have as many now because we've gotten the process down to where most of them make it, you know, but every now and then we'll still have some where like maybe the resin, like you said, sometimes you can see drips. So if there's like obvious drips, for some reason we missed something, or if it just prints funny, like we've had some where they're completely usable. It just kind of looks weird. You know?
There's just something about it, you know, it's just, like, it doesn't look right. And so every time we see those hooks, we're like, it's pretty, but it's just, it doesn't meet the quality control. We've had people where if it doesn't match exactly what's on the photos, they return it, they get upset. And so we're just like, we're trying our best. It's fluid. Like there's only so much you can do. So
well, and I think I can't remember who I was talking to. It had to have been one of the other people that was who makes like the resin handles, because I've talked to at least 2 or 3 people that make resin handles, and it's just a reminder that right now, and I mean at some point maybe it won't be, but for you and me right now, it's handmade, still handmade. So it's not going to be perfect. It's not mass produced. It's not, you know, made in a warehouse somewhere where it's made, you know, hundreds and thousands at a time. Like
Yeah.
it's still handmade. And I think that's, you know, that's what you're paying for. You're paying to support small families. You're paying to support, you know, people who are working for you. You're paying, you know, it's very different. You know, you can buy hooks on Amazon. Like I have a whole list of, you know, our focus still, you know, we do make the smaller hooks now, like the hybrid hooks that have the, you know, metal hook inserts and all of that. But our focus is still that jumbo niche.
Yeah.
And I have a whole list of here's where you can buy cheap jumbo hooks. But once your hand starts hurting, and once you know, especially if you love working with jumbo yarn, I only worked with chunky yarn when I would do craft shows. And I got to a point, this was obviously way before we even thought about making hooks, but I invested in some hooks from Greece. So it was a handmade, hand-turned wooden jumbo crochet hooks from Greece. And they were way more expensive than I'd ever spent on a hook, but I did it because I knew that the hooks I was using now, it wasn't worth the pain and like not being able to crochet at a level to where I could have enough stuff ready for shows. You know, so it's just whether or not people get to that point where they see the value of investing in something that's going to help.
Do you have a lot of people with arthritis that have actually enjoyed your hooks because of how wide the grip is?
Yep. Yeah. And I think what's so interesting is I love that our hooks are very different on the size, like the width and the shape.
Yeah.
And I told my husband the other day too, and I say this all the time, our hooks are not for everyone. Because like some people, for instance, love Furls hooks. Some people hate them. They don't like how they feel. They need a wider grip or a smaller grip. And so we're all serving a niche of the community of what people, so for me, our hooks are exactly what we need because I'm the one who designed them. I needed, you know, something that kept my hand from cramping. But there are some people who would need an even wider grip or something with a thumb rest, or, you know, we all have these specific things that we need out of our hooks.
Yeah, we've definitely done a lot of weight testing, like trying to measure our hooks up against others, and it's very insightful because like our hooks are super lightweight, like they're an ounce. And they balance out super well, and there's grooves so that you can essentially hold it like a pencil, or you can hold it like a knife holder because it kind of has a thumb grip in a sense, not the traditional kind. But I think the only thing that we've ever had is, if you look at all of our reviews, the only feedback we've ever received is just the length of the hook. And so that is something we plan on changing in the future. Like I can't size everyone's hands, and that's very difficult to do. So
I just had someone reach out, and it was actually a guy who had bought a couple of our hooks, and our hooks are just a little too small, even our largest hooks. So like, let me see if I've got an example. So we keep our smaller hooks shorter because I was worried about making them too long and making them easier to snap. You know, so I didn't want to make them too long. And then, like, for instance, if someone holds a hook down here, you're just putting more leverage where it could have a break point. But these are our smaller hooks. These are shorter. This is a 9mm hook, but then this is a 16mm hook. So there is quite a difference there, and it is in the grip. But this person bought one of the larger, it jumps at 14mm. So from 8mm up to a 13, we're at this shorter size, and then it jumps up at the 14 because I felt like those were beefy enough to where if I made them longer, it'd be fine. But this person has actually asked if we could do a custom set of a certain amount of sizes where the grip is just a little bit longer. And all of our hooks used to be this shorter size. I still have like a 16mm shorty before we had gone up. We called these the long boys because these were actually a custom size. And so it's that evolution. And like you said, at some point I would like to have some longer options, but it's making sure that that's not going to interfere with the strength of the hook.
You have to like pick and choose your battles on how you want to deal with that and everything. It gets interesting. Like there's a whole science to hooks, and if you don't realize it, like it looks like your hooks are more inline focused. Like
so this is the
It's like doing makeup.
That's it. Yeah. And I think that's really, it was really just because I don't have a background in like CAD and designing. And so I literally use basic shapes to make these hooks because I designed them. So I used 3D printing software, designed them. And I have no idea how I would make like a tapered hook using 3D printing software.
We were like, Paul and I are super nerdy on these types of things. So we started investigating, and Paul, like, I don't know, he goes down these rabbit holes like he always does. And he found the science to fibers and inline hooks. And so I think that's why the hooks work so well for many people. But we learned how to design it so that it would be like the perfect tapered hook, at least for us. But it's definitely a science, and we've had a lot of people like, I'm sure you've understood like how to measure a hook, but like, so here's like a hook, right? And the tapered hooks are supposed to not fall in line with this whole entire shaft. And so the tapered hook will bend out a little bit. Well, a lot of people, especially when they see our 4.5 or 5 hook, they see that the head of the hook is like super, super small. And they're like, I don't think that your sizing's correct. And it's like, hold on, let me explain how this works. And we have to explain to measure on the shaft here. And some people are trying to use like the Clover crochet hook and knitting needle, like measuring tool. And they're trying to insert it into like the ones with the circular holes. And I'm like, you can't do that unless if it's an inline hook. And so a tapered hook, you'd have to like bend it in and then slide it through just to see if it actually fits properly. And that's why they have the hook measures where it's more like a half circle, if you will. So definitely some education, I think. And I do plan, like when I have some time, like educating people a little bit more on like, how do we size hooks? Like, it's not just the hook head. There's a science behind it all. It's not as simple as people think.
I mean, that's ours. This whole section is what we're measuring, you know, so the section below this up to where the handle juts out that's what matters, you know, because that's where your stitches rest. And we've seen that a lot with, so I had someone show the difference between, it was our 10 millimeter and I think a Furl's 10 millimeter, which some of the Furl's hooks that like, we couldn't find a 10 millimeter measurement on the entirety of the section. It was one of the Galaxy Streamlines. I couldn't find a 10 millimeter measurement on it anywhere, even though it was a 10 millimeter. And someone showed a difference between the stitches with that one and with ours, and they were all even. Because again, like I used to love Furls. I still use one of the smaller ones. So the stitches were all nice and even, but the Furls gauge swatch was larger than ours. And I was like, well, it's because there's no 10. It just goes from smaller than 10 to larger than 10 on the on that section.
You know what's funny though is I've gone to store. We did this whole thing where we just spent a ton of money on crochet hooks, and we bought them all in the same size, and we measured each one with the gauge measuring tool. And what was wild is like you get a Clover hook, and let's say it says that it's a 5.5 millimeter hook. It's not a 5.5 millimeter hook. Sometimes it's 5.75. It's sometimes less than that. But you know, you go to another company and it's the same thing, and it's over and over. So we take pride in like measuring our hooks and trying our best to stay within a small standard deviation window of the actual size point. And what people have to realize too is it's not just always about the shaft of the hook, but it's also like the width of the grip, because that changes how you ergonomically will go do that. And like you being an exercise physiology major, like I'm sure you totally get it. It's like, how do I properly explain this to people where they can understand like tension and grip and all of that can change how your gauge swatch can come out. So I always tell people, once you use a crochet hook, stick to that same exact crochet hook the whole entire time. You can't just flip from one 5 millimeter to another 5.
That's true. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I just think it's so fun seeing, and I still think that we need to make like a hook makers guild for all of the hook makers out there, because I feel like there are a lot now but it's like I'll look at what you guys are doing versus what we're doing versus like what Kelly with Knit Brooks is
So
doing
cute.
with the wooden
Yeah.
hooks, you know? I mean, it's just, and following those journeys and like seeing that, and I hope that all of us are able to stick around for the long term because I feel like it's, and as more people come into this world and I think my favorite thing about the hookmaker world, and I've seen this pretty much with anyone that I've talked to that also makes hooks or hook handles, um, I'll say, you know, I feel like we're very lucky because we're in a community of collectors.
That's
And
so true.
we share a lot of the same people that want hooks from everyone. Like that there's not like I only buy hooks from this person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's amazing.
It is. Some people, I'm just amazed that they even have our first hook we ever made. Like, those are some legacies out there. We're just like, how do you still
Yep.
have that? So,
Yep. Someone actually just messaged me today and they were asking, they said they had bought one of our very first hooks that we ever released and they needed me to remind them what size it was because at that point we didn't know how to mark them and we were only making one size anyway.
oh,
So I was
yeah.
like, well, I'm always going to know what they were because we only made one
Yeah.
size. And that was like a 16 millimeter hook. And so I was like, oh yeah, it's 16 if that was an OG and it doesn't have a
Yeah.
mark on it. That's exactly what it was. And I was like, I'm just so glad that it's still serving you well,
Yeah.
you know?
Have you looked into doing fiber festivals at all, or?
We would love to. I think it's so that was our adventure to go get an RV. Was kind of this opportunity for us to start taking business on the road because we're at a point where we could take pretty much everything we sell with us.
Yeah.
Now I do have to check, like I'm slowly starting to like put things into the RV to see like how much space is it going to take up if we bring all of our inventory, like our hooks and our tools, stickers, keychains, you know, all my apparel is drop shipped and like mugs and things like that. So I wouldn't have to have any inventory there. But if we can take everything on the road, then we could go to fiber festivals. We could just work from different locations. You know, we have 2 dogs, and that's always been our biggest
Challenge.
stick with vacations because we don't like to board them. We don't really want to hire someone to come watch the house. We've always been a little weird about letting just anybody come in our house. And so it's, you know, that has stopped us from doing a lot of things. And so we got this RV and now we can take them with us. And I would love to do that in the future. Like, I think it would be so much fun to vend. And if we can bring everything with us, we'll be set up for a show.
Sure. I know that, like, for us, we're going to do our first fiber festival in September. We can't technically,
Awesome.
we can't formally announce, like, where and all of that just yet. But we did apply. We got approved. We're just waiting for the official notices to go out from the organization. But it'll be our first attempt just actually being, because you can't just go to like a random craft show with your hooks and just be like, let's hope.
Nope.
But we're going to be dropping down a ton of money. It's the most expensive booth we've ever done. So it could make or break how we do in terms of the sales. I hope at minimum we break even. We just don't know what to expect. But we're projecting for it. We've got our employees ready to go for it. And if it works out well, I'll definitely let you know. I think it's worth going to a fiber festival because at least you have people who are dedicated in the community and then they know other people and they just have a very special interest. And those are probably likely going to be your collectors. And then if not them, they'll at least showcase what they were able to get and help kind of branch you out as well. So
yeah, it's definitely, you know, craft shows in general are always kind of up in the air, especially if you've never been. You know, I think that's I used to try to reach out to people that had vended in the past of like, was it even worth going, you know? But I do think, I mean, I think it would be really fun to do a festival because we've got, you know, we're set up to where it's not just the hooks. And I think that's why I was like, at least if we did a fiber festival, we would have stuff like keychains and swag and stickers that are at that lower price point.
yeah.
Where people are like, oh, I can't drop $50 on a hook, but I can buy a $6 sticker from you,
Yeah.
you know?
And that's kind of like how we're gonna be too. Like, I've got
Yep.
like, I'll probably have a couple of shirts on display and then some
Yes.
stickers, and then like we can order on the spot and then we can ship them out, or we can, whatever's available on there, like right there, should be fine. We try, like, because there's so many unknowns and we're still in the growth phase of the business, it's so hard to project like how much inventory should you have. It's difficult. But I think we finally got to a science of it right now, that like we're never feeling like, okay, we screwed up, because we call it our campfire incident, where we had the campfire hooks and you're like, okay, let's do a batch of like 100 hooks. And we were like, because normally we would sell that many hooks. The day we released those hooks, we got one sale, and we were like, what just happened? We were like, this never happened.
We've been there.
Yeah, and
we've
we're
been
like,
there.
Minimum, we sell like 60. Like, so we were like, we thought we were over prepared. So we still have these campfires, and they trickle through. They're selling, but we never want to go through the campfire incident ever again. So what we do is we just take photos of the hooks now. And we have a couple of samples, and we have at minimum what we typically sell, based on previous history. We've had enough sales now to kind of figure that out. And then if any come in, then we'll start making it. But that's why we have certain collections, like the gemstones are always going to be churned and burning, but the other hooks are more like, hey, once they're made, and that's all we've got. So that's why they're like one of a kinds.
Yep, and that's how so far all of our hooks have been one of a kind. I mean, it's been, our releases now are anywhere from, I would say 20 to 40 hooks on average, and it just spans. Like, it's usually 1 to 2 of each size. So like that would be for our classics would be an 8mm up to the 25mm, and almost every size in between. But our goal starting last year was we wanted inventory. Like, we didn't want to sell out and always feel, so one of my biggest rubs with getting handmade hooks originally was, and not a rub, but like, I don't have a lot of patience. That's really why I do like chunky yarn and super basic projects, because I can make a cardigan in a weekend, you know? And so we wanted to have every size in stock, and preferably in multiple options, so that just throughout the year, you know, I remember one time, I think this was more of the issue that I had before, was there were a couple of times where crocheters, and it wasn't even hooks, it was one time it was a mug that was like a limited run mug, and it was one of those things where like it sold out in like 2 seconds, you know, like I really wanted one, I had it in my cart, I was ready to go, and it just sold out. And that feeling of missing out, and like, no, I'm not going to make these anymore, you know? And I was like, I don't want to do that, you know? I feel but it's a balance, because it is a good feeling when like you put out a release and you sell almost all of them, because then it's like, oh, good, okay, we're good. This was, you know, this was a hit. And it's hard to tell what's going to happen when you come out with something new. Are people going to like it? You know?
Some hooks take us by surprise. I'm like, I don't think anyone's gonna like it, but we'll try it. And then it's just like, what in the world just happened?
And they're gone.
Yeah, they're gone. I don't know. I mean, we try our best to like get these things out and try not to be sold out on anything, because to me, like when we first started, we didn't realize the demand of our business, and then we didn't realize how many customers we were potentially losing because we did not have stock. So we kind of changed things behind the scenes to help project for it. And we use some AI technology to help build our awareness between the shops. And so even though people might think AI is bad, like you can use it in a very good way. And that's how we do it. And it's helped so much, because we never want to ever go through, like, I mean, we spent hundreds and thousands of dollars on an employee busting out all of those items only for it to not be sold. I mean, in December, I was like starting to freak out. I was like, oh my goodness, we're not going to make it. Like, what's going to happen? So we had to redo everything. It was a nightmare. I thought we were going to go under. I was like, no.
I mean, and I think that's where people forget that the everyday little stressors of, like, you know, if you're staring at like your payment account thinking like, okay, I'm looking at last year's and I'm looking at this year's. Am I going to even make what we made last year? You know what I mean? But then it's like all the other factors that are involved. You know, yeah. I know, you know.
It's a challenge. I'm kind of, like, because we've been growing, it's hard to, and it's just hard to look back on history to be like, what should I do next? And all I know is that we're growing. Whatever we're doing it right. We're trying our best to make sure hooks go out within 1 week. Sometimes we can't, and it's because typically there's a demand, and it's not that we don't want to get it out within a week, because we fully understand, like, customer service, like, #1 priority. Like, that is,
and that's what keeps people coming back, I think, you know, is that connection. And, you know, if they feel, I mean, I know, like, for me, if I feel cared for by a company, I'm going to be pretty loyal, you know, if I feel like they give a crap if something goes wrong, or, you know.
Yeah, we've had people, like, they'll order a hook and the next day they expect it to get shipped out, and I'm like, did you read the, like, description? Have you known us very well to know that sometimes it takes a few days? Like, because even while I'm at work full time, I have employees working during the day. Like, they're still getting everything done. So it's not like, oh, I'm ignoring the order. And sometimes they'll have buddies that are getting orders before them when they ordered first. And I'm like, well, it really just depends on the supply and demand. Like, is your hook already pre-made and ready to go? Or did we have to, so it just kind of depends. And it's not necessarily a first come, first serve, but we do prioritize the first order to go out as soon as possible based on the given circumstances. So.
Gotcha. Well, we are almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you, when it comes to personal projects and actually crocheting, because I feel like sometimes when we've got this business where we're, you know, doing everything but crochet, what's something, are you working on anything right now that you're excited about? And how do you make time for crochet?
I actually, people have been kind of seeing this one on social media a little bit. So I really like blankets, and I like things that are mindless, and I love the colors that I chose in this, but I'm trying to embrace basic stitches. I want to start doing free patterns on the blog, things that are a little bit more stylish and modern. So that's definitely a project. And as far as, like, how do I squeeze in time, that one's really difficult. I think my husband has learned, because sometimes I think he sees that I'm crocheting and he thinks that it's a part of working, and I'm like, no, leave me alone, I need this. So I do it during movies, or I do it when depending on the type of pain I'm having for the day with my arthritis, like, I'll pretty much try to crochet during those times. Or depending on the project, it's typically when we're doing drives down to Texas to pick up or drop off our daughter. So it's not very easy, but I'm hoping that once I get more employees, I can focus more on the actual crocheting and just overseeing everyone doing stuff, so that I can run more of the blog portion here in the future.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited to see where you go and how you grow, and especially, like, when you're able to move and see what that looks like if you guys find a space. So we'll have to check back in. That's really my goal. My goal with these Pink Sheep and Friends is not just, like, introducing people to new people that maybe they're not following or don't know about in our community, but it's really creating an opportunity for me to continue to check back in, and, like, we can all kind of, because I think sometimes we don't celebrate our successes. Like, we'll share good things, but I think remembering to look back on the growth and, like, watch where we've come from, and we have these, like, milestones where it's like, here's where you are now, this is what it looks like.
For sure.
You know, if we check back in a year, who knows where you'll be?
Hopefully Salt Lake City. We'll see. Yeah, no, you're totally right. Yes.
Well, I'm so glad you came on. Thank you so much. I'm glad that the weather did not just end it all for me again. But we'll definitely talk again soon. We'll obviously keep in touch. We'll have to figure out a hook swap, because I would love to send you a hook and we can try each other's hooks and see what that's like.
Definitely do that. And Kelly had a great idea to, like, just have a hook maker chat. I was like, that's actually a really good idea.
Well, and that's what we talked about, the guild. So I had her on. I mean, it was before she had baby.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
it was a while ago. And but we talked about doing some kind of guild or club, and you know, bringing people in and having a sounding board. Like, I think that's the just in crochet, we need our niche communities within the greater community,
mm-hmm.
because that's where we find people who have that kind of same I guess like brain waves, you know.
We're all the same.
Just bounce ideas off of. Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you again. And I hope you have an amazing weekend. And huge thanks to everyone who watched this live and who has joined in and who has stuck around. We've got, I think I saw 14 people are still hanging in there and watching us after an hour. So thank you. If you missed out, if you came in late, these are always available on my Instagram feed to rewatch if you want to, but they are also it will be uploaded to my YouTube channel. So there's a whole playlist full of amazing chats with amazing makers. So if you need to meet some new friends or have something to binge watch while you crochet, there you go. But I will see you guys hopefully next Friday. Fingers crossed. But thank you so much again, Patty. I wish you nothing but the best. And I can't wait to see what's next.
Yes, we will definitely stay in touch, and thank you so much for the opportunity to chat.
Of course. We'll talk soon.
Yep.
Bye, guys.
Bye.